little one. Join us!
Have you ever truly listened to the profound silence of a Japanese night? A silence so deep it feels as though the world itself is holding its breath in anticipation of something hidden? It is in these moments of absolute stillness, when the humidity of the air seems to carry the echoes of centuries past, that a peculiar sound might drift down from the darkness of the attic. A dry, rhythmic tapping, a series of precise, yet biologically heavy footsteps that seem to vibrate through the very timber of the house. This is not the frantic scurrying of a common mouse, nor the heavy thud of a stray cat, but something more deliberate, something that feels as though it possesses a consciousness far older than the structure it inhabits. This is the Itachi, the Japanese weasel, a creature that modern society has come to view as a lithe and charming inhabitant of the forest, but one that our ancestors regarded with a terror so visceral it bordered on the religious. For the people of ancient and medieval Japan, the weasel was never just a small mammal of the fields. It was a spectral messenger of calamity, a shadow that walked between the worlds of the living and the dead, and a harbinger of the invisible deaths that we now call plague. It was believed that these creatures did not merely live in the shadows, but were the shadows themselves made manifest, emerging from the cracks in reality, to deliver the judgment of a nature that had been slighted. When the Itachi appeared, the air grew cold. The scent of stagnant water and old iron filled the room, and the local inhabitants knew that a season of sorrow was soon to follow. They were the silent walkers, the carriers of a darkness that could not be fought with swords or prayers, and their presence in the collective memory of the Japanese people is a testament to a time when the boundary between the natural and the supernatural was as thin as a sheet of rice paper. Today, we shall embark on a journey into the heart of this darkness, peeling back the layers of cute animal videos to reveal the skeletal, terrifying truth of the Itachi, exploring the intersection of historical tragedy, folklore, and the cold, hard facts of biology that made this creature the ultimate symbol of the invisible killer. Imagine, if you will, the sudden shattering of a village's peace as 1,000 tiny, luminescent orbs begin to twinkle at the edge of the forest, moving in a synchronized, undulating wave toward the human settlements. These are the eyes of the Itachi swarm, a phenomenon so rare and so terrifying that it was often recorded in the official journals of local magistrates as an omen of total social collapse. Individually, a weasel is a solitary hunter, a fierce and clever predator that can take down prey, much larger than itself through sheer tenacity and speed. But when they gathered in these massive, unnatural groups, they seemed to lose their individual identities and merge into a single terrifying collective mind, a living river of fur and teeth that flowed through the streets like a liquid nightmare. The records from the Edo period tell us that after such a swarm passed through a village, the survivors would often describe a lingering, heavy fog that refused to dissipate, a miasma that smelled of rot and musk. This was the so-called poisonous breath of the Itachi, a supernatural toxin that the people believed would settle in the lungs and turn the blood to water. In the days following such an event, the village would inevitably fall silent, as a mysterious, high-burning fever began to take hold of the population. Those afflicted would complain of internal heat so intense they would throw themselves into icy wells, only to find no relief their bodies, eventually giving out as they screamed at invisible pursuers in the dark. While we might look back on these stories as mere superstitions of a pre-scientific age, there is a chilling biological foundation to the terror. The Itachi is a masterpiece of evolutionary stealth, its body a long, flexible tube of muscle and bone that can compress itself to fit through gaps, no wider than a human thumb. They are the ultimate infiltrators of the human sanctuary, moving beneath floorboards and above ceilings, with an ease that makes the idea of a secure home a complete illusion. However, their true danger did not lie in their predatory nature, but in the microscopic passengers they carried within their sleek, brown fur and upon their sharp, curved claws. The Itachi was a mobile reservoir for some of the most lethal pathogens known to man, a biological courier that transported the seeds of death from the deep. undisturbed parts of the wilderness, directly into the bedrooms of unsuspecting families. A single scratch from a startled weasel, often ignored in the chaos of a midnight encounter, could introduce a cocktail of bacteria and viruses into the bloodstream that the limited medical knowledge of the time was completely unable to diagnose or treat. Victims would soon find themselves spiraling into a delirium, where the distinction between reality and nightmare dissolved their skin, turning a sickly, mottled gray as they gasped for breath that would not come. Have you ever walked down a lonely, unlit road and felt a sudden prickling at the base of your skull? A sense that you were being watched by something small, fast, and impossibly ancient? If you look down and see the faint, shifting reflections of several pairs of eyes barely inches above the dirt, you must realize that you are not looking at a group of animals, but at a warning from a history that refused to be forgotten. I invite you to share your own experiences with the inexplicable in the comments below. For even in our enlightened age, there are things in the dark that science has yet to name. Among the many supernatural phenomena attributed to these creatures, perhaps the most visually arresting and profoundly disturbing is the legend of the Itachi, Bashira, or the Weasel Pillar. This is described as an occurrence where hundreds, perhaps thousands of weasels begin to climb upon one another, their bodies intertwining and locking together with claws and teeth, until they form a towering vertical column of living, writhing flesh. To a lone traveler stumbling upon this in a moonlit field or near a neglected graveyard, it would appear as a massive, swaying pillar of fire or a column of smoke that had somehow gained physical solidity. Witnesses who survived these encounters spoke of a sound that accompanied the pillar, not the natural chatter of animals, but a high-pitched metallic screeching that seemed to vibrate within the very bones of the listener, creating a sense of nausea and existential dread. As this living structure rose toward the heavens, the temperature in the surrounding area would plummet, frosting the grass and turning the breath of the observer into a white mist regardless of the season. Folklore dictates that wherever this pillar was sighted, a catastrophic plague would inevitably follow within the year, wiping out entire lineages and leaving behind only ghost towns. From a modern folkloric or ethological perspective, one might hypothesize that this was a misinterpreted observation of rare mass mating behaviors, or a frantic migratory response to environmental collapse. Yet, to those who lived in constant proximity to the precarious edge of survival, the Itachi Bashira was a physical manifestation of the breakdown of the natural order. It was as if the earth itself were vomiting forth a structural warning, a living monument to an impending doom that could not be outrun or bargained with. The sight of creatures physically merging to form a singular, towering mass suggests a loss of individual identity in the face of a greater, darker force, a theme that resonates deeply with the way epidemic diseases treat human populations, turning a community of individuals into a nameless pile of casualties. The psychological impact of seeing such an architectural impossibility made of living flesh cannot be overstated. It was a sight that shattered the sanity of those who beheld it, leaving them to wander the fields in a catatonic state, their minds trapped forever in the image of that swaying, screeching tower. Looking at the broader context of human history, the terror of the weasel is not unique to the Japanese archipelago, though the cultural expressions of that fear are uniquely vivid. Consider the Black Death that ravaged medieval Europe, a catastrophe that reshaped the very foundations of Western civilization. While rats are traditionally blamed for the spread of the plague, the role of small predators like the weasel in the ecological chain of infection is often overlooked. In Japan, the Itachi was a double-edged sword. It was respected for its ability to hunt the rats that destroyed grain stores, yet it was simultaneously feared as a vector for the very diseases those rats carried. The plague bacteria, Yersinia pestis, would find a perfect home in the fleas that nested in the Itachi's dense winter coat. As the weasels moved with incredible speed and agility between rural villages and growing urban centers, they acted as high-speed delivery systems for the contagion. A single Itachi, carrying hundreds of infected fleas, could leap from a thatched roof into a crowded marketplace, shedding the seeds of a pandemic with every movement. The records of great outbreaks often mention that just before the first human cases appeared, the streets would be filled with the bodies of weasels that had succumbed to the very sickness they were spreading. They were the grim reapers of the animal kingdom, and their lithe forms became synonymous with the sharp, sudden scythe of death. This historical reality gave birth to the legend of the Yokai Itachi, the sickle weasel. This creature was said to ride upon the dust devils of the mountains, striking with such incredible speed that the victim would find themselves bleeding from deep, surgical wounds without ever having felt a moment of pain. While many dismiss this as a myth to explain the effects of vacuum pockets in high winds, the metaphor is strikingly accurate for the onset of a deadly infection. You feel the wind, you feel the chill, and by the time you realize you have been touched by something invisible, the damage is already done. The blood is flowing, and your life is beginning to ebb away. The Yokai Itachi is the poetic personification of the invisible contagion, a warning that the most dangerous enemies are those that strike without being seen and depart before the scream can leave your throat. Perhaps the most terrifying biological reality that fueled the Itachi's reputation as a demonic entity was its role in the transmission of rabies. An Itachi infected with the rabies virus underwent a total transformation of its nature, shedding its natural caution and retreating into a state of pure, unadulterated aggression. A rabid weasel would emerge from the shadows with its eyes, bloodshot and wide, foaming at the mouth, and possessing a strength and tenacity that seemed entirely supernatural for its size. It would attack anything in its path, from livestock to grown men, biting and clawing with a frenzied desperation that the witnesses described as being possessed by an asura, a wrathful deity. For the villagers of the time, who had no concept of viral pathogens, this was the literal manifestation of a curse. To be bitten by such a creature was to be sentenced to a death that was as humiliating as it was agonizing. The victims would eventually develop hydrophobia, the intense and irrational fear of water, a symptom so strange and horrifying that it was often linked to the interference of water spirits or kappa. The patient would convulse at the sight of a cup of water, their throat muscles seizing in a violent spasm that prevented them from drinking, even as they died of thirst. The sight of a loved one snarling, biting, and recoiling from water like a scorched demon cemented the Itachi's place in the pantheon of monsters. It was a creature that could steal your humanity with a single bite, leaving you to die as a mindless beast. The mad weasel, running in erratic circles through the village square, was not seen as a sick animal, but as a herald of the end times, a sign that the spiritual barriers protecting the community had been breached by the forces of chaos. The terror was compounded by the fact that the onset of symptoms could take weeks or even months, meaning the threat was always there, lurking in the blood, waiting for the moment to reclaim the victim's soul. Beyond the physical threats of plague and madness, the Itachi was also feared for its uncanny intelligence and what was perceived as a capacity for human-like malice. Unlike many other animals that shy away from human contact, the Itachi seemed to actively observe and even mock the people whose homes it haunted. There are countless stories of weasels that could mimic the voices of family members to lure someone out into the night, or of those that would rearrange household items in a way that suggested a calculated, taunting presence. They were believed to be masters of vengeance, possessing a memory that could span generations. A farmer who killed an Itachi that was raiding his coop might find that for the next 20 years, his family would be plagued by a string of bizarre accidents and lingering illnesses. The Itachi was said to harbor grudges that did not end with the death of the offender. It would haunt the children and the grandchildren, its scratching at the ceiling a constant reminder of an unpaid debt. One particularly chilling account tells of a man who attempted to smoke out a family of weasels from his attic, only to find that the creatures did not flee. Instead, they began to laugh a high, chattering sound that perfectly mimicked the laughter of his own deceased children. The man was driven to madness within the week, convinced that the weasels had stolen the souls of his kin and were wearing them like clothing. This psychological warfare, this erosion of the victim's sanity through auditory hallucinations and persistent stalking, made the Itachi a unique kind of monster. It did not just kill the body, it dismantled the mind. Even today, in the remote corners of Japan, you will find small shrines dedicated to the Itachi, not out of love, but as a desperate attempt to appease a creature whose wrath is considered more certain than the seasons. These shrines are often found near old crossroads or at the base of ancient gnarled trees, places where the world of the civilized and the world of the wild intersect. People still leave small offerings of fried tofu or polished stones, hoping that the small shadow-dwelling observers will look upon their households with indifference rather than malice. If we look at the statistical data of modern times, the connection between the expansion of Itachi habitats and the emergence of zoonotic diseases remains a topic of serious scientific inquiry. As humans continue to push further into the remaining wild spaces of the world, we are coming into more frequent and intimate contact with creatures that have lived in isolation for millennia. The Itachi family, known for their high metabolic rates and their ability to host a wide variety of viral strains, are often at the forefront of this interaction. They are biological chameleons, their systems capable of housing and mutating viruses that can eventually bridge the gap between species. The messages passed down through our folklore, the warnings of the Itachi, as a bringer of plague, were perhaps the only way our ancestors could conceptualize the complex ecological reality of disease transmission. They understood that when the weasels moved into the village in large numbers, the natural balance had been disturbed. Deforestation, the displacement of apex predators, and the encroachment of human habitation all drive these small, resilient creatures into closer proximity with us, carrying with them the pathogens of the deep forest. The Itachi as a yokai is a metaphor for the consequences of our own arrogance, a reminder that the more we try to dominate the natural world, the more we expose ourselves to its hidden, microscopic terrors. They are the guardians of the threshold, and their presence in our homes is a sign that the boundaries we have built are failing. Whether it is a historical pandemic or a modern viral outbreak, the shadow of the Itachi is always there, moving just out of sight, a silent witness to our struggle for survival. As we look toward the future, we must recognize that the Itachi is far more than a mere footnote in our natural history books or a character in a ghost story. It is a symbol of the eternal tension between human civilization and the untamed forces of the earth. They are the watchers in the rafters, the silent observers of our triumphs and our failures, always ready to reclaim the spaces we have temporarily taken from the wild. Their glowing eyes reflect a truth we often try to ignore, that for all our technology and all our medicine, we are still vulnerable to the invisible, the small, and the persistent. The next time you hear that tapping in the attic or catch a glimpse of a long brown shape disappearing into the tall grass at dusk, do not dismiss it as a mere animal. Consider it a messenger from a world that operates on rules we barely understand, a world where every action has a spiritual and a biological consequence. The Itachi is the keeper of the gate, and it is our duty to listen to the warnings it has been giving us for 1,000 years. The conclusion we must reach is that the Itachi serves as a sentinel, standing at the precarious edge, where the light of human knowledge meets the infinite darkness of the unknown. They are the barometers of our environmental health and the physical manifestations of our ancestral fears. Their movement into our lives is a call to humility, a demand that we respect the invisible threads that connect all living things. If an Itachi should appear in your life, do not treat the encounter lightly. Observe its movements, respect its space, and perhaps look within yourself to see what balance has been lost. For in the end, they are not just hunting the mice in our walls, they are hunting the shadows in our hearts, reminding us of the fragility of our existence. They are the ancient ghosts of the plague, and they are still here, watching, waiting, and laughing in the dark. In closing, I must urge you to hold this one truth close to your heart as you navigate the coming nights. The Itachi does not merely carry sickness in its blood. It carries the very essence of the threshold, the bridge between our mundane reality and the terrifying vastness of the unseen. It is said that if you should ever find yourself locked in a gaze with one of these creatures under the light of a pale moon, you must never be the first to look away. To break that gaze is to surrender your shadow, to allow the creature to plant a seed of the invisible fever within your soul that will sprout when you are at your weakest. If this exploration of the shadowed history of the Itachi has left you with a chill that you cannot shake, I encourage you to share your thoughts and your own local legends in the comments below. Each story you tell is a thread that helps us weave a protective net against the things that move in the dark. Your participation in this community of seekers is what keeps the light burning against the encroaching miasma of the forgotten. The long arc of our history is filled with lessons we have chosen to forget. But the Itachi is a teacher that refuses to be silenced. Its presence is a testament to the resilience of the natural world and the enduring power of the myths that keep us safe. Even in an age where we can map the stars and sequence the very building blocks of life, the primitive terror of the dry footsteps in the attic remains a potent reminder of our place in the cosmos. We are not the masters of this world, but guests who must share it with creatures that were here long before our first fire was lit, and will likely remain long after our last city has crumbled into the earth. Tonight, when the winds pick up and the house begins to settle, do not go looking for the source of that scratching sound behind the walls. Some things are better left in the shadows, where they can continue to guard the secrets that we are not yet ready to know. Thank you for walking this dark path with me today. Do not forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a high rating to ensure that you do not miss our next descent into the mysteries of the world. Until we meet again, may your nights be quiet, and may the shadows in your attic remain still.